Hi, everybody. David Nour back with you for another Sales Community Tech Sales Insights with my co-host and founder of the Sales Community, Randy Seidl. Hello, Randy.
Hey, Nour. How you doing?
Doing great, thanks. Good to be with you. We've got an old friend from our HPE days joining us. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, David. It's great to be here. Hey, Randy, nice to see you.
Great to be seen. And this, I think, is episode 34 of this. So, Nour, thanks so much. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Terry way back when, since our college days at BC, and have always kept in touch. And he's grown and evolved to be, if not the top, one of the top tech sales leaders, but especially on the channel side, world renowned. So, Terry, look forward to having you here.
Yeah, thanks, Randy.
Terry, to echo Randy's comment, I think in the post-pandemic world, those channel relationships, and we're going to talk a lot about that winning channel strategy today, are going to be more critical than ever. Before we start, and for our audience, I would encourage you, we're live on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube. I'd encourage you to jump in with your questions of Terry Richardson. Terry, could you briefly do a brief intro of your professional background and talk a little about your current role?
Yeah, happy to do it. This year marks 36 years in the tech industry. I spent my first 5 in kind of new account and install base sales management roles at Burroughs and Unisys. Then I moved to Data General, which became EMC after the acquisition, for 14 years in a variety of customer and partner-facing leadership roles. Then I took a swing at a venture-backed startup. I ran worldwide sales for a company called Cepiton that was ultimately acquired by HDS. Then I spent 11. Randy recruited me into HP, which became HPE after the split. Spent 11 years there. Little known fact, I did retire for 30 days at the end of January after that run, but decided there's too much more I wanted to do in the industry, so got back at it, and I'm coming up on 3.5 months at AMD, where I run the North America channel business.
So what does that North America channel business entail?
So responsible for all products in our portfolio, client and server processors, graphics, as well as so branded systems, where we work with the largest OEMs on the planet that sell products based on AMD processors. Also have a component business where folks that are kind of building their own white box solutions will buy raw components.
Just in case any of our audience members have been living in a cave, how about some context on AMD in terms of size and scope of the company?
So 51-year-old company this year, fast growing, compete principally with Intel in the microprocessor space. Heavily invested in R&D, as you might imagine, and we're enjoying pretty strong growth. Our financial performance has been very strong. Our technology roadmap, both what's been delivered and what's planned, is compelling. So I feel like I'm joining at a good time.
And before we jump in, is all the microchip shortage that we keep hearing about in the news legit, or is that a demand and supply?
No, it's definitely a legit concern. It often gets framed as a supply problem, but it really is a demand challenge. Demand's exploding. Our output this year will be more than double the number of processors we produced a year ago, but it's still, kind of not enough to meet all the demand.
And the fascinating part is it touches every part of our lives, right? From our cell phones to cars to, Randy knows I'm a big motorcycle fan. You can't get bikes because they're missing those microchips.
Missing chips, yep. It's definitely, that's why it's a real issue. It's not being overblown in the media. It's a challenge.
It's a good problem to have. So let's talk about trends. What trends have you observed in the last, say, 14, 15 months, Terry, that you believe are going to continue to bolster what we're talking about, which is this massive demand for microchips and AMD's business, and then particularly talk about maybe trends that could threaten your channel relationships?
So I'll go 3 that I think are really fueling the momentum, and we're really in kind of a compute mega cycle now. A rapid move, continued acceleration related to IT modernization. Companies that hadn't invested ahead were kind of caught flat-footed in some respects with the pandemic and all the challenges associated with that. So They've learned a tough lesson that they need to accelerate. There always had been a move towards digital transformation, doing more with data that can be collected. I think that will continue to accelerate. And one that we often hear about, and it plays to an an AMD differentiation, is security. There's so much in the news about ransomware attacks, and it's always been kind of a board level issue, but I think increasingly it's a top of mind decision point on what can companies do to protect, their critical data.
Seidl, I remember when you were leading ESSN at HP, you had a really strong relationship with AMD. Talk a little about that kind of OEM AMD type relationship and why it's so critical to both companies' success.
Yeah, I guess Intel coined the expression "Intel inside," but basically, just like with your motorcycle, right? Your motorcycle is only as effective as having the chips, and same thing from an AMD perspective. And I will say, sorry to slight Intel, but I think it's amazing, and Terry probably knows the facts a little bit better. But AMD's really done an amazing job the last kind of 3 or so years, really positioning and gaining market share and really growing, right, Terry?
Yeah, we've seen strong growth on our client side, but even probably more profound on what we're accomplishing kind of in the server or data center category, both on-prem and even a greater acceleration with the hyperscalers, the big public cloud providers. And it's really a very simple value prop that it's easy for partners to understand and articulate. It tends to be faster, cheaper, and more secure.
Love that, right?
It's not a hard one to articulate.
Right. You ever meet somebody who says, not interested? No, thanks. Question of you brought up security. What about security makes AMD unique in this space?
So just the work we've done, either ourselves and building security into our product and the way it's designed, where we're not exposed to some of the breaches that have impacted our competitor. But we also work collaboratively with key ecosystem ISVs, so we can actually secure VMs. So for all the clients that are using VMware, it's a really unique differentiation that's only available with AMD technology.
So one of the things that Randy had this vision around the sales community is come learn more, come grow, come sell more. Can you talk about some attributes? I'm having a lot of conversations with leaders right now, and talent, Terry, is a huge topic, right? So I'm always interested in that interview process, in that dating process. Are there some attributes you've observed that really tell you out of the gate, that's going to be a really sharp channel rep, channel kind of manager? So talk about some of those attributes that are predictors of that person's success.
Yeah, that's a great question, David. And it's certainly evolved over the years, right? I mean, when I first started, the perception was, and in some case, the reality perception was those that couldn't cut it as direct customer facing reps ended up in the channel, right? But that's really doing a disservice to all the great people that work in, with and for partners. Really what I look for is a couple of traits. I do like, candidates that have prior direct customer experience because they understand, what a typical partner's sales representatives are up against and what they're trying to get done to articulate solutions to customers. I want folks that are competitive, but I also really, there's a skill that you almost have to be humble. And what I mean is, by definition, you're usually not going to get a lot of the credit. If it's a really large strategic win, there's going to be somebody that was closer, within your own company to the end user that was involved, because you end up in a lot of co-selling situations. So you can't, the old adage about check your ego at the door that Randy probably learned way back in his early EMC days. I think that's really important for channel people, and I think you need to be balanced, right? You really want to drive for the kind of the short-term successes, but channel ultimately is a long game. And you have to focus on partnerships that sustain the test of time. So looking for people that kind of have a balanced approach.
Seidl, you've got a pretty successful sales recruiting business. Delineate for me when you're looking at a candidate of that person has really got more of that direct DNA versus, this person is probably going to be a really strong channel rep.
Yeah, well, I think there's probably two categories when companies are looking for, I'll say, outside direct reps. Some of them that are, some people are channel some, channel only, channel not. So if you're not, then it's, end user only. But then if in that end user sales force, if they do want to have some of those channel competencies, that's, a kind of acquired and developed skill set. And then separate from that, then is your question around the, channel profile.
Oh boy, did we lose Seidl?
Maybe look at you froze, but David, I would add, relationships matter, right? You've written on this topic, right? And having relationships that may have been formed in prior experiences, prior companies, they tend to stand the test of time, and that's an important element as well.
And the other thing that Terry, I keep thinking about is direct reps often are, directly they have much more of a direct impact on their own efforts. Where my experience, the best channel reps often
enable and influence others to be
without authority, right? So I've got to convince somebody else to prioritize me, and they offer other products and services as well. So why and how would they put my solution forward and really lead with kind of my solution versus somebody else's? And that knack in particular is what I want to talk about a second. Terry, do you believe, and in your experience, is that nature or is that nurture? Is somebody born with that ability to engage and influence? Or as Randy mentioned, is that something that they develop over some period of time?
I think it's a combination of both. I think, people that are naturally extroverted, people-centric, relationship-focused tend to perform better, but they can always be learning. They can always be advancing in their own capabilities. So I think it's a blend of both.
So Seidl is back. Seidl's tech's working. He's good with us. Okay. So Randy, I love your tough love approach to this. What are some of the channel reps you've met in the past? Are there some things that they do that really shoots them in the foot? Kind of what are some of the missteps of some of the channel reps you've known over the years?
Yeah, so you could take it as a positive or negative, but not having the high level relationships at the partners, at the leadership to help shape the strategic direction, so you can say, hey, a year or two from now, here's the things we want to be working on. And you have to kind of go from that strategic mindset to then what could be super tactical kind of firefighter. Maybe there's a problem account, you need something delivered. So then they kind of need to be, a quarterback to sort of speak, and then kind of go back to their own company and say, look, here, we need this done for the partner, and to be kind of a loud voice to make sure that they're supporting the partner. And then one of the rare skill sets that I always think is amazing is those channel reps that can actually go on sales calls with the channel partners and add value is kind of the icing on the cake. And I know something Terry and I have tried to work on for a long time.
Sometimes we talk about, David, the difference between reporting the news, which anybody can do, and making the news, right? You try to find people, I want to make the news, and I want my team to be focused on making the news each and every day.
Yeah, and the successful channel partners really need to make the PBMs, for lack of better words, partner business managers, are really part of their own internal team in terms of what they're doing, how they're doing it, the meetings, and there's a certain degree of trust and respect that's needed in order to get that and have that.
So Randy, are the two of you talking about Eric's comment that says top channel reps build demand for the OEM products and solutions?
Yeah, I agree, because there's always choices, right? So part of the job of my team currently is to create preference when multiple solutions could do the job, but how do you preference, kind of one technology over another?
And Eric's got our kind of old school thinking, right? Kill something and throw it over the fence to an OEM rep.
It stood the test of time. Eric knows well. People have long memories.
That's exactly right. So, Randy, you and I talked about, it's sad, but the average tenure of a CRO, what did you say, 18 months, 20 months?
Probably 15, 16 months.
It seems like channel folks tend to stick around longer. And I want to build on Terry's comment that you don't want to be short-sighted and penny wise and pound foolish, because people do have long memories. Talk about the tenure of a channel rep and channel manager versus direct. And I'm going to go to Terry to build on that.
a great question. The real answer is I have no idea what it is, but whatever it is some number of times longer than CRO for sure. And I think the real reason is you have board, CEO, and if somebody's can use the bad use example, shooting a gun, but somebody's pointing at somebody to blame, it's a CRO is usually the one to fall, and channel may be further under that, but also the channel kind of stands the test of time because it's always going to be there. You can debate whether it's doing well or not, but something that's really such a constant. And I would assume in most companies, they really don't want to do much to upset the apple cart as long as it's progressing reasonably well.
Yeah, so I would just add a little bit to that, Randy, where for most kind of vendor sales organizations, it's not uncommon to see a reorganization annually, certainly every
couple times a year,
maybe a couple times or every other year, where if you add, and so therefore there's disruption to that seller to customer relationship, right? If you and I have asked this question to many, but if you poll partners and say, what's the average tenure of your sellers and their customer relationships, it's not uncommon to hear 9-10 years or more.
Yeah.
Right. So they always seek to become that trusted advisor, right? Because that they need to, and it allows them to, by wanting to play that role, they have to it forces them to stay on top of technology trends and almost be the first to bring new ideas, new innovation to their customers, right? So having that longevity really starts to set apart, the channel partner. And then if you think about the folks that work for vendors that are covering channel partners, the relationships do matter. And almost every company knows they can't hire enough of their own sales force to cover all potential market segments and to break into all the new accounts they want to. So kind of hiring the channel in kind of an off payroll way is a great way to get scale. That's why so many of the startup companies and others really rely heavily on channel partners and their relationships to bring new technology to market.
So Terry, we've been talking a lot about channel reps. How would your response and the attributes that I love that, right? So prior direct customer experience, competitive, humble. Obviously, we're talking about relationship centricity. How would those attributes change if we're talking about channel managers or even channel leadership?
So similar to sales management, I think they have to exhibit a real balance between kind of the tactical, doing the right thing day to day, being a coach, being a mentor. But they also have to have an element of that strategic capability, right? Really, it's almost more business leadership sometimes than sales leadership. It goes beyond just sales leadership. So you kind of always want to have folks that are thinking about, kind of what's next, what's the plan for the health of the relationship to make sure it's mutually beneficial. I talk to my leaders over time about the importance of balancing, the selling skills and the operational excellence, and you really have to do both.
Randy.
Yeah. So just a reminder, folks that are on, Eric's been great chiming in, but anybody else, feel free to add comments and especially questions. So Terry, to put you on the spot, we're talking about channel leadership. You've been a channel chief several years running. It's an award by Channel Reseller News, so congratulations for that. And I know you're way too humble, but what do you think distinguishes you from other channel leaders in terms of being considered one of the best?
I don't know. Maybe I've been at it longer.
No.
I would say, you really solidify relationships, by being constant, being present, and you kind of have to balance that partner advocacy with kind of accomplishing the company's objectives, right? So I try to form very true relationships that some of them kind of start to border on friendships because you kind of get to know the people, you get to know the motivations. It's interesting as the kind of the channel has developed over the last several decades. Some of the owners and operators have been in it from the early days, So they're kind of at a point in their life, like some of us, where you're kind of thinking about, okay, what's next, right? So you can kind of start to get into conversations that go beyond the day-to-day, like where are you trying to take the company? What's the plan? Are you an acquirer, an acquiree? Is there someone that you're grooming to take it over? And you just start to get into really, interesting business conversations. I'm fascinated by the entrepreneurial stories that I've heard over the years about how companies founded, but you try your best just to give as much time and of yourself as you can to partners to form those individual relationships. You can't do it with thousands and thousands, but I try to pick carefully and spend as much time as I can with the ones that really seem to be the most important.
Randy, Eric wants to make sure he gets his money's worth from this live stream. So we have a question from him.
All right, Eric. How does AMD stay ahead of Intel this time? Optron was a great example of leadership, then letting it die. What's the longer-term technical strategy this time?
So Eric's point is referencing a kind of a prior offering from AMD. History would show that AMD was in the server business, got out of it for several years, focused more on client and gaming and some other things, and the company, went through a pretty precipitous dip. Kind of a dark period. But back in 2017, we announced the new line of server processors we call EPYC. And not only we announced a compelling technology, but we announced, one or two future generations, and we've kind of stuck to the roadmap and hit all of our deliverables in terms of, we're on our third generation. We've already announced the fourth and clearly planning beyond that. So, part of it, Eric, I think is just, kind of doing what you say you're going to do and really build credibility that way and keep innovating and keep investing in R&D to maintain a leadership position. But ultimately, we'll be judged over the test of time. But certainly since 2017, we've been very consistent, and the company's been rewarded.
Here's a old friend of the sales community, one of our early on guests, Frank Rausch. Randy with a question.
All right, another several time running channel chief. Terry, you have great relationships. How do you extend your network with AMD with new types of partners?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and Frank was one of my channel mentors that I kind of admired his approach. Frank, it's great to have the question. So a lot of my traditional relationships when I stepped into this role kind of fit partners that are selling on the server side, Dell or HPE or Lenovo. It's kind of a lot of the partners that I work with, right? But as time gone on, there's new partner types. So that we've seen a massive rise in the managed service providers or MSPs. So that's kind of a new set of partners to focus on. And then, as I alluded to it earlier in the conversation, there's a whole bunch of component white box system builders and systems integrators that I haven't worked with before. So that's opening up some new relationships. So the channel just continues to evolve. There's new partner types that form, and you just try to always be thinking about where the industry's headed and making sure you're focusing on the right set of partners at the right time.
Love it when past guests join us. So here's another one from Peter Corker.
When you are hiring new channel reps, what qualities do you look for?
Kirk, you must have missed the beginning.
Be nice.
No, I'm only kidding. So Peter, a lot of the same attributes I look for in sales reps, right? You want competitive, you want professional, high integrity, but I really think you need folks that are kind of partnership driven and willing to be more of an enabler than having to take all the credit for any of their own successes. So share in the success of many, not just yourself.
Randy, let me go to you before I ask Terry another one.
Yes. So also too, I think, Terry, both you and Frank I'd also add your qualities or leadership qualities, just, operationally very efficient. So, just being able to know kind of what's where, how, I mean, obviously it's just doing your own business is hard, but then you got channel and you got their teams, being able to kind of have all that organized and know what's going on and have some degree of being able to look through the front windshield is really amazing. And then also I think one of the key attributes with both of you in terms of leveraging those relationships is, okay, how do you create kind of unique value propositions? Ultimately, the partners need to make money, but then how do you kind of juggle kind of back with the home office, with the channel partner to create some of those programs that then can be a true win-win. And I think you've both done an amazing job with that.
Thank you.
So let me build on that, Terry. It seems like the great channel reps also have to be air traffic control, right? You made a comment of balancing and really leading by that partner advocate, that partner champion within the organization, but also you got people that are cutting your paychecks, and the company's got certain priorities. And I love Eric's comment about channels as force multipliers. How do you do that? How do you do that effectively to kind of be an advocate for that partner and yet still have an agenda that you have to drive?
And that's where I get back to kind of having a plan, whether it's a partner-specific plan or it's planned for a set of partners or an overall, kind of North America or worldwide channel plan. It really is about, finding that right balance and being crystal clear on priorities, investments that get mapped to those priorities, and then what's the governance model so you can, monitor if you're on the path to show a strong return against the investment decisions that you made. And that's that operational piece that you can't ignore, because it's easy for the funding to stop if you can't show that it's adding value.
I'm gonna date myself. I carried a bag at Silicon Graphics.
Oh, good.
You would love that 60% of my annual business, including several President's Club, came from channel partners. But I got to tell you, there was always this friction, if not head-on conflict between the direct guys and channel partners, right? Combination of touched it to combination of whose paper that's gonna go out on.
Yeah.
Are you still seeing those? Have they been easier to resolve with advent of kind of RevOps? Talk about that direct versus channel conflict.
So I think, part of it stems from the orientation of the company, right? I think we've seen an evolution over the years. One of the things that I look for, certainly I investigated before I agreed to join AMD, was, from a senior leadership, CEO on down, what's the posture towards the channel? Is it passive? Is it silent? Fortunately for me, and one of the reasons I ended up here was from the CEO down, channel will be the growth driver of the company, right? So that helps a lot, David, to eliminate channel conflict, which oftentimes is the source. Any given transaction, arm wrestling over who did what when kind of sort of doesn't matter as much as did you satisfy the customer? Do we have a successful outcome? Can we work together on the next one? But if conflict is pervasive or not discouraged, then it's very difficult to be a successful channel chief. But if you're in an environment where I think partnering is understood and embraced as part of the overall corporate strategy, kind of makes it a little bit easier. And as it relates to kind of RevOps, your question there, I think of that as bringing kind of sales and marketing operations more closely together. And I think in today's day and age, that integration between the two has never been more important, right? If we learned anything during COVID times, it's you have to think differently. Everything became kind of a virtual or digital marketing event, much more than the in-person relationship building stuff. So as things tend towards digital and probably not looking backwards anytime soon, making sure that sales and marketing are on the same page for the greater good, I think is really a step forward.
Seidl, have you spent a lot of calories in midst of channel and direct conflicts, or have you managed those over the years?
I tell you, it is just amazing that you talk to and I think it's just a control ego thing or just lack of maturity, right? You have these end user reps. I'm like, okay, well, you get paid more by selling more, right? Yes. And they'll say, oh, we need pre-sales resources. Okay, we have to go hire more. We need more SEs. We need more headcount. Okay, great. It's called the channel. How about having, as many as you want pre-sales resources and as many sales reps as you want working for you as a sales rep? How about that? And by the way, you get comped usually about the same, whether it's direct or indirect. So it's this ongoing struggle. Just again, Terry and I have been in this together with several situations. So, those that are, and it's actually great with some of the younger up and coming folks, right? Because they don't know anything different. They say, hey, well, this is great. So they don't have the egos or whatever issues some of these other people have. But, for sure, those that leverage the channel definitely sell more.
Yeah.
Terry,
it's not a sign of weakness when you're working with the partners. It's actually a sign of strength and wisdom.
Yes.
Terry, do you believe we onboard channel reps and channel partners effectively, efficiently, impactfully enough from the onset?
I think you can always do better. Depends on the company and it depends upon the situation. I think the partner onboarding is a tricky one, right? Especially as it relates to technical training, which is really what most vendors want, because the SAs or the pre-sales resources that Randy referred to oftentimes are the most critical kind of community inside the partner, because they're close to the customer requirements and specifying what's the right solution to solve the customer's problem or requirement. But the more time you try to get them away from their customer facing roles in training, that starts to kind of impact the company. So you got to kind of get that balance right. And at AMD, it's interesting because I'm a piece of solutions that are sold by our OEM partners, whether it's Dell or HPE or Cisco or Supermicro or Lenovo on the server side, or HPI and others on the client side. We're part of their solution. So I think we've got to kind of ratchet back the expectations of what do they need to know that's unique to us, and what do you just trust that the vendors are conveying that will help kind of pull along our products.
Do you do anything with the sales reps of those channel partners?
We sure do. It's kind of a combination of, I would say, lighter training than technical training, but it really becomes, I almost feel like a marriage broker, where you're trying to get, kind of vendor sellers and partner sellers to work together. And just finding ways to get them to, the old adage about people do business with those that they know, like, and trust. Usually we're starting with the know, right? Just getting people to get introduced. And then how do you do that, with a frequency, they start to build a trust, and they've done some business together, and then it's, then it takes off from there.
Randy, let's go to you before we take a couple of questions from Eric.
Absolutely. So, Terry, maybe you can touch on, I'll do a shameless plug. So it's
already in print.
Your go-to sales advisor. Yes, this is the rough draft. We have a revised version coming. The published date's going to be July 6th. It's available on Amazon now. For sales community, we're going to be posting some things. But anyway, so you were kind enough to give us one of your best practices around relationship management, which is on page 177. So I know you've touched on a lot of things on the relationship aspect of things. Any other things that you might touch on? And then Nour, after he's done, maybe to you, because certainly with your relationship economics book, it's amazing. Lots of great pointers there.
Yeah, so a couple of things that I'll just underscore, Randy, that I haven't already talked about. I mean, I alluded to the fact that, successful partnerships should stand the test of time. So when you're building the partnership, really take a long-term view, right? Understand what each other wants out of the relationship. And then as it relates, kind of expressing back internally on the vendor side, finding ways to uncover and then expose the value that the partner brings to the company, right? We're investing in this partner relationships for a reason. Don't just assume everybody knows, because, the mistake that people make is all partners are the same. It's a homogeneous community. Nothing could be further from the truth. Every partner has a unique skill set, unique capabilities, unique set of customers, and the best channel reps and the best plans expose that value add, and you anchor the partnership on that value, especially the value that together you bring to the customer. And then I would just kind of emphasize the importance of agreeing, like, what are we trying to do together? Why are we investing time and energy in this? What's success look like, and then build a governance model around that success plan, and have quarterly milestone checkpoints to make sure we're on track.
Seidl, I would build on that with, I think, 3 things the audience really needs to hear. I've long believed that number one, relationships go bad with misaligned expectations. Regrettably, I'm convinced we bring in reps, we bring in channel reps into a company, and we teach them the product, we teach them the market, we teach them all about what to do and how to do it and how to succeed. and we don't invest in that relationship development. We don't invest in really helping them understand in that geography, in that account, here are your most valuable relationships that you should prioritize and focus on. And by the way, if I don't align the expectations with that channel partner, they're going to assume I'm doing this, I do this, the gap is where we have a problem, right? And vice versa, right? So that's number one. Number two, somebody posted a really interesting poll on LinkedIn about this whole work from home versus getting back to the office, and should it be 30% or 50 or 70? I finally said, forget WFH, working from home, forget WFA, working from anywhere. It's all about WFX, which is work from everywhere. The X marks the spot. We're going to increasingly be much more of a hybrid environment. So increasingly important for people to build hybrid relationships. How do I connect digitally? How do I influence digitally? And then when does it make sense to meet in person? I think that's something we're going to have to kind of jockey around. Last but not least is I'm going to build on Eric's comment and yours as well. The astute sales reps are going to see the channel partners as force multipliers. I'm not scalable. I can't be everywhere. So the more I build and nurture relationships for those channel partners to become ambassadors of my brand, the broader my influence footprint, the more footprint and presence I'm going to have in that account, in that territory. But you got to genuinely be that quarterback. You got to be that, air traffic controller. And a lot of reps don't really understand what it takes to succeed in working with the channel partners, channel peers. So on that note, let's go to Eric. A couple questions. Lisa Sue, I love that. Kick-ass CEO. How often does she meet with partners and customers?
So Eric, that's a great question. I agree. My first impressions of Lisa Sue, the AMD CEO, have been extremely favorable. I couldn't give you an exact number because I don't know her worldwide travel schedule. I'm just focused on North America. But when we've asked, she's become engaged, and certainly, as you'd expect, with some of the top partners, she knows and is acquainted with the CEOs, and my understanding is she's interested and willing to do more. So part of my job is to just kind of build bridges where with certain relationships, AMD's been relatively absent. So I would say beyond the CEO, members of the senior leadership team of the company have been unbelievably willing. The typical conversation is, hey, this is great. How can I help? Fully on board with what you're doing. Tell me how I can help. So whether it's partner roundtables or in-person meetings or keynotes, they're willing to do it. So far, so good.
Love that. Randy, let's go to Frank Roush. He's got another good one.
All right, Frank, thoughts on the evolving value of distributors. So for those that don't know, usually the way the ecosystem works are the vendors or OEMs or the ISVs will sell to distributors. Then the distributors will then go to the channel partners who then go to the end user customers.
Yep.
So Terry?
Oh, I thought he asked you the question, Randy. The distributor value has continued to stand the test of time. It's certainly being tested by Amazon and others now. But I would say, continued assistance managing partners, right? There's the broad spectrum between the very large, which, I happen to lead a smaller team now than I've had in the past. So there's only so many that we can do an effective job with. So I rely heavily on distributors for kind of that remainder of the partner set to help drive collaboration. I see distributors being increasingly solution and services focused. So they're adding new and different services capabilities that many of the traditional resell or second tier partners don't exhibit. So they add value that way. And they continue to increase their cloud capabilities with marketplaces and other ways to address the hybrid needs of partners and customers.
Which leads to another good one by Peter Cork.
All right, Peter, thanks. Is AMD considering providing an as-a-service model for processors, and will it be available through partners?
That's a great question. I have not been privy to any conversations about that, but some of the major OEMs that we work with have their own as a service offerings. And what it's causing us to do is, rather than pricing on a deal basis like it's a traditional CapEx sale, we're providing pricing over a longer time horizon, because that as a service contract, let's say sold by HPE, may be a 3-year contract. So customers are looking for pricing that extends longer than just the initial sale. So we are modifying our approach to pricing to contemplate, longer availability of that price.
So does that become like an OpEx opportunity?
It could, David, but again, we're typically selling to the OEM who's selling to the end customer. So it's an OpEx opportunity for the OEM. For us, I still think it's a capital sale. But
got it. So Eric's got another one.
All right. Thanks, Eric. What has been your greatest challenge in moving over to AMD from a hardware OEM?
Thanks for the question, Eric. The good news is it hasn't been that difficult at all, because so much was familiar. The vendor side, the partner side. I think being a subcomponent of the solution rather than articulating a major or a total solution is a little bit different. But I look at that as an opportunity, because I have so many great friends and connections that work at all the different vendor hardware and software companies that are relevant to the AMD ecosystem, that it just gives me the opportunity to be more collaborative with folks as opposed to competitive. So that's been a positive, refreshing change. But a little bit of a different headset to think just about microprocessors or graphics cards.
Terry, as we talked about, almost inevitably every conversation I'm having with a C-level executive, talent seems to be an ongoing challenge, specifically identifying them, attracting them, developing them, retaining them. Do you believe this pandemic has made finding not just mediocre, but exceptional channel professionals more difficult or less? And if so, why?
So it's a good question. I'm not sure I have a full view, because my time at AMD has been towards the tail end of the pandemic, but I definitely have experienced. I mean, there's more people leaving roles. You read about that a lot, and I think kind of the leading and the kind of hot technology companies tend to make it easier to attract people that are looking for kind of a change of pace. And so I've been fortunate to be working now at a pretty hot and high growth technology company, which was one of the attributes that I was looking for. I wanted to be kind of in a growth mindset each and every day. Definitely people were getting burnt out. Definitely people were getting tired of the same old. Folks that were in partner-facing roles, some of them had the benefit of already well-established partner relationships, so they could do what they needed to do by Zoom or other Teams or other video or technology means. Where if you were a new account seller trying to reach customers for the first time, you had to learn a whole lot of new tricks around how to reach them, in new and different ways. So I think it's been a little bit easier on the channel side, but that's just kind of off the top of my head. I hadn't really thought about that a lot.
Seidl, how about you? You think finding great talent a little more difficult through this pandemic or easier?
I think it's harder for companies to recruit. So I think if you have the right value prop, there's plenty of talent. But in our recruiting side, it's a call today with somebody who was leaning into his direct reports that I think there's a lot of hiring managers who are just not disciplined around the process of identifying. Once you identify a great candidate, you have to make sure that you speak with them. You have to make sure you're recruiting them as well. And you've got a short decision-making timeline and process in order of executing, getting the offer out there and done. And then if you're going to wait 2-3 weeks, they're probably going to be off the market. And a lot of these companies think, well, if they want me, they're going to come back to me and blah, 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 everything else. I'm like, hey, it's hot.
So along those lines, do you still are pushing them to move pretty quickly in that decision-making process and moving people along their recruiting engine?
Yeah, you have to. And again, this one that we had today, where basically, hey, if you can't respond, we're just not going to bother, because it's we only get paid if you're going to hire somebody, and if you don't have the wherewithal to go kind of beginning to end in a timely way, forget about it.
Yep.
So I got one for Terry, if I can.
Sure.
So Terry, may be a little controversial, but kind of thinking about marketing overall. It's, some companies are joined at the hip. A lot of companies are church and state. We hear from a lot of revenue leaders who say, hey, if I had some of their OpEx, I would influence them differently around their metrics and how they're helping sales. What's your perspective?
So I've kind of seen really good and really tough relationships between sales and marketing over my career. Part of what as I look back on my career, if I achieve success, I think I can trace a lot back to having a alignment internally across the ecosystem, whether it's marketing, but operations and finance, and just kind of getting, spending the time and cycles to kind of get everyone on board. So if you have common goals and common expectations and a common approach to measurement, it makes a difficult conversation easier, because everyone wants the most crisp ROI. Sometimes you can't get it. Everyone wants more funding than seems to be available. So it's always a little bit of a kind of give and take. Fortunately, so far, I'm in the honeymoon phase, but so far it's been really terrific at AMD, where what I'm asking for, I've been able to get. I thought you were going to go on the partner side. Marketing is a challenge for some of the channel partners. Some of them are better than others. Some of them think they're good, but time has shown that maybe some of the investments that we've made over the years haven't been as good. So I think, all companies probably need to ensure, sales and marketing are on the same page and leveraging appropriate techniques.
Terry, build on that comment a second. The channel partners that are doing marketing well, can you comment on one or two things they're doing exceptionally well, and the ones that are struggling? What's the struggle? What's the problem?
So I think the ones that take their own responsibility for cultivating new customers, whether that's their approach to digital marketing, their propensity to be active on social media, their willingness to hire inside reps to do, kind of follow up and some of the early top of the funnel activities, they tend to be better at it, right? They've kind of perfected a model where maybe some of the more traditional partners that rely on vendors, either on the hardware or software side, to kind of bring them opportunities, tends to be more of a struggle. They may not have advanced to, what it takes to win and be successful, kind of going forward. I know that's a gross generalization, but that's as best as I can compare and contrast.
Makes a lot of sense. Randy, we got another question from Eric.
There you go. Eric's on fire today. Do you see more consolidation occurring in the channel and distributor side, and how will that affect AMD go-to-market?
So absolutely see more consolidation in the channel, whether it's because of freer private equity funds that's interested in the space, or, just companies that are finding it easier to acquire their way to top and bottom line growth. We're definitely seeing consolidation where the bigger channel partners are getting bigger. They're having national coverage, or in many cases now international, which has been fascinating to watch, because customer deployments tend to, oftentimes for enterprise customers, you're talking about trying to do a worldwide data center deployment or a worldwide client rollout, and they'd like to do that. So you think of, companies like Computer Center and Softcat that traditionally were European partners, now have big and growing presences in the U.S. You watch, companies like Ahead as one example, just continue to grow by acquisition, and they're strengthening the markets that they cover, geographies and vertical capabilities. So it's fun to watch, and some of the more traditional NSPs are adding to their solution capabilities by buying cloud expertise or acquiring other expertise. So I think everyone's in a race. to address the customer requirements, and acquisition oftentimes is the way to go. On the Disty side, we've all read about the planned combination of Synnex and Tech Data. So that will start to upset the status quo in the North American distribution marketplace, and it'll have ripple effects around the world. I think there'll be probably a little bit more, but there's far less to consolidate in distribution than there is on the solution partner side.
Randy.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of some of the other channel partners. So one of our early guests, Jim Sullivan, who's running
NWN. Yeah, just
there's got Carousel.
Yeah.
Last year, I think it was John McCarthy with Mainline. They bought
RTP.
Yeah, RTP. So again, you've got some great traditional IT leaders that then are going in to run some of these channel partner VARs, and then doing a great job, I think, making them a lot more operationally efficient, but then leveraging that model to say, okay, now let's grow through acquisition as well as the internal growth.
And as they build out their services capability, what they do in Cleveland can be relevant to what they do in Miami or San Francisco, right? They've kind of got the recipe now. Now it's about how can I more quickly kind of get the word out and acquire customers.
Yeah, and more, I think you'd agree on the channel partner side, it's kind of more of a solution. I mean, you go back years ago, it was kind of a product sale, resale type of thing, but now the best ones are really putting in those solution sets together.
Both on-prem and hybrid deployments, leveraging public cloud increasingly.
Randy, we got a question from Mike.
All right, Mike Katoya, Tech Target, great to see you. Staying on the channel partner side, are you seeing the resellers starting to build their SDR function to focus on those top of funnel opportunities and leveraging data to progress the opportunity, or are they still focused on outside reps only?
So that's a great question, Mike. It's nice to hear from you. I think I haven't seen a strong trend. I mean, if I had to say one or the other, I think I see an increase in the inside or SDR function, but I don't see a massive shift going that way. But I do see an increase in that focus. And I think as digital tools become available, whether they're from TechTarget or others, I think that lends itself well to that top of funnel activity that I think is best served by specially trained SDRs and BDRs. So I think the more progressive ones are embracing that and leveraging technology.
Terry, you've been at this game for a while. How do you continue to learn and grow as a leader? What's lighting a fire in you to kind of still approach every day with that growth mindset?
So I try to open my mind to continuously learning, whether it's kind of watching other leaders within the company or outside the company. I try to ask, very thoughtful questions when I'm in, one-on-one or settings with partners and entrepreneurs that are built and leading these successful companies, and really just continue to try to be a sponge, right? You kind of have to admit that you don't know it all, and you should always be open to learning new things, just like you should be open to building new relationships and trying new things. So I think it's a mindset that I just try to take, and every now and again I'll read Randy's book, and I'll read business books or spend some time online, just trying to keep the wheels turning and trying to stay ahead, right? One of the things that I pride myself on is looking forward to where the industry's headed, and making sure that I'm doing things that position whichever company that I'm working for, right in line with where things are headed.
Randy Seidl, when you're not writing your sales advisor book, how about you? How are you learning and growing?
Well, I've really enjoyed putting together sales community. So our tagline is, how's that for layup? Learn more so you can sell more. And as much as I thought we knew, it's amazing, all this kind of automation and tools and everything that's out there. And we've got a bunch of different topic areas, but one of my favorites is remote selling. Just amazing, all the content and ideas and feedback that people have. So I've been focused a lot on the sales community side, and I guess I can continue with my shameless plug. So we still have I call it a 30-day no-brainer opportunity, no-brainer trial. So for those that want to try it. If you want to get off after a month, feel free. But obviously we do it because it works and people stay with it, and great group to network with. You can see several that are on the advisory board like Terry and others, and just real good content all around. So thanks for the question.
Love that. So we got a great comment from Frank. Pat Gelsinger was pretty active channel CEO champion. Challenge or opportunity versus Intel?
So, I learned early on that you always have to show great respect for your competitors. I think it was a terrific hire. I don't know Pat personally, but by reputation, incredibly strong. Those that have worked for him and with him, I've always heard positive. So I think it's really good for that company. And I think competition will make everybody better.
Love that. So Terry, in thinking about your own journey, are there some coaching or advice that you got along the way that you believe has had a real profound impact on shaping you as the channel leader that you've become?
So I think the biggest one that I try to hold on to is if you put your focus on making others successful and you do that well, then by definition, you'll be successful, right? So I've always had this kind of coaching, mentoring, developing kind of approach. But I also try to, I've learned the importance of very clear communications, because just if you kind of say something and you think it's obvious, people may not get it. So I try to be very precise in my communications, and therefore, more precise in my follow-up. And there's not a lot of surprises about, what I'm expecting, what I'm going to measure. So those two things have played well. One of the ones I learned early on that I didn't necessarily take to heart, but some can appreciate that may have done better than others, is if you have an opportunity to get equity, always go for equity if you have the opportunity.
Love that. Do you make it back to BC at all?
Not as much as Randy. I was there the other day just looking at the expanding campus, but felt a lot of fond memories, a lot of family and close friends from my time there. So
love it. So for our final question, you have an option: either a fun Randy Seidl story, keep in mind it's a PG show, or you can talk about what you've been doing during the pandemic for fun, and what are you most looking forward to on the other side?
Well, since we're talking about BC, and that's where Randy and I first met back in 81, I would say, thereabouts. So it's been a while. I'm not going to go to some of the stories because we'll keep it PG. But when you're in college, right, it's a learning experience. There's kind of the academic side and the social side, right? So my experience with Randy definitely tended on the social side of things. And so if I was to say, okay, probably least likely to be a published author versus most likely, I think Randy would fall in the least likely category. But I've been incredibly impressed with his friendship, but what he's accomplished and the new ventures that he's taken on. So I do congratulate him on the book, but I didn't see that one coming in college. I would have to.
Right, we're all shocked.
I had everybody else participate, so my contribution today, a whole bunch of you smarter folks participate.
Another way he's leveraged his relationships to get something out the door, right?
As good as anybody that's ever done it, I think.
Love it. For our audience, you've been listening to Terry Richardson, North American Channel Chief at AMD. Terry, on behalf of sales community, thank you for being our guest today.
Thanks for the opportunity. This was really fun.
Good. Yeah. If I want to echo Randy's comment, if you haven't had a chance to visit salescommunity.com, some great folks, a lot of great conversations, a ton of learning and opportunities like this. By the way, we turn these conversations into our podcast as well as articles. So I hope you'll come and join us. Randy, I'm going to give you our final close.
Yeah, great. Terry, fantastic. Really appreciate it. Fantastic wisdom. Nour, as always, great job putting it together. And again, go check out salescommunity.com. Awesome information. You'll be seeing and hearing more about our book. And next week, also very excited, we're going to be hosting Chris Lynch, who is a serial entrepreneur, serial venture capitalist. His current day job is CEO of AtScale, and also is chairman of Data Robot, which is a massive artificial intelligence AI super fast growing company. So I'm sure Chris will be great. And there's always, I'm sure, some surprises that you get with Chris. So definitely look forward to that. And you can go back on our site as well, and you can see the other 32 odd episodes of this that we've done as well, if that's of interest. So in closing, Nour and Terry, thank you so much. For those that have been watching, thank you so much, and feel free to pass the word.
See everybody next week, same time. Thanks.
Thanks all.